if you were able to hear this chant that Scott just offered on, with all of our hearts chanting, and we'll be, I'm sure, continually improving on this collective experience. But he just chanted this very beautiful traditional offering of gratitude for Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Buddha, of course, the historical Buddha, but also you, your true self, this reality of who we really are, what this is. And then Dharma, of course, the teaching that comes down to us in this tradition, so rich, all of the ancestors, all of the sutras, and yet also each and everything. And the Sangha. Buddha said, if you have just one of the three treasures, this Sangha, this community of practitioners, and the whole wide web, just that one treasure, you have all the treasures. So once again, welcome everyone now to the first talk of our summer session, this retreat that Henry and I have called Intimacy with All Things, what koans can teach us. We might have said what koans convey or unleash, how they work in and through us, what this world is, the world that is most intimate to us, what we ourselves are. In a tribute to Yamada Koun Roshi's translation of that great koan collection, the Mumonkan, or Gateless Gate, one Zen master wrote, koans are the intimate family history of Zen. Intimate family history. All the ancestors, all our relatives, all of it, intimate to each of us and all of us. That history newly imparted, so to speak, in each case, each encounter, inviting us to come home and find where we've been all along. So here we are at Mountain Cloud in the Zendo and in the cloud as the cloud, the wide web of connection of Sangha. And for all of our feeling our way, it's an auspicious beginning in a season of record-breaking drought and these horrible wildfires. Santa Fe, this whole area, had a drenching rain yesterday, with now more on the way. The earth seems to hold no grudge, just drinking it in. We can hear it right now. Along with the rain, today is the summer solstice, that day of beginning when it's often said the sun seems momentarily to stand still. It's as if the day, the turning of the globe, is calling out one of the Buddha's first teachings. Stop and see. That's one way of describing what we're doing here. Letting everything settle down, quiet, come to a stop, and then seeing what comes clear in the silence. What comes clear in the sound of the rain? Late yesterday, a student sent pictures from Somerset in the UK, where he lives. There was a blue summer sky, a red-orange sunset, a country road with fields and wildflowers, a weathered wooden house, pebbles along a stepping stone path, and a rainbow over it all. The caption that he had put there. So much beauty this solstice time. No filters needed. I was reminded of looking up at the moon in the night sky and that sense that everyone in the world is looking at the same moon. And then came the thought, what about the rainbow over Ukraine? What do you see when you face it? Stop and see. Dogen, Ehe Dogen, called this stopping, seeing, practice realization, with a hyphen, one word. He wrote, when you practice just sitting and continuously give up all thoughts and views, the way becomes more and more intimate. This way, and the way of koans, what we are, what we're exploring, what we're expressing. When you practice just sitting and continuously give up all thoughts and views, the way becomes more and more intimate. So it's the custom in Sesshin to begin in this first talk with the koan mo, the root koan that Mumon put first in his remarkable collection. Mu, the single syllable that's been borne along generation to generation by the case known as Joshu's dog. Some people, more than a few of you at this retreat, are new to Zen. So this may be a first. And by the way, it's fine to take in this talk in any way you wish, but not necessary to maintain your formal sitting posture. So yeah, please deities. So some of you have heard more talks on Mu than you can remember. Some totally new. Doesn't matter. Over the course of the last month or so, Henry has given a series of talks on a koan, the last word. What is the last word? Sit with that a bit, even a bit, and it may become clear. You can't say the same thing twice. It's impossible. So here is the case. Joshu's dog. A monk asked Joshu in all earnestness, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Joshu said, no. That barest koan. Inexhaustible, infinitely dynamic, and absolutely one. Look into Mu, even looking into it with new eyes. It's wonderful beginner's mind, this great advantage actually, plus simply the reality. Just look into Mu and you can't find an edge. You can't divide it. Let Mu pervade. And this sense of a separate self cannot survive it. Dogen called Mu a sun with stone melting power. I think he's the only master that said Mu is ... A sun with stone melting power. That sun that is shining so brightly here in these clouded, rainy skies. Shining right here in the rain. Or some masters call it the sharpest sword. Sword penetrating, cutting away. That lovely famous phrase from Haku and on, cutting the two into one. You can use this Mu as a power tool, or you can just hold it. This sword is in your hands. Each one of us. It's your practice. I've heard Henry say, practicing with Mu is like swallowing an explosive device. Or Will Brennan at Mountain Cloud recently said it's like taking a pill and letting it just dissolve in your mouth. A solvent, tenderizing, opening, clearing away. For those who are new to Zen, maybe you just recently read The Three Pillars of Zen. You might, well, if you did that, I'm kind of impressed you're here. You know, it's a lens, a picture into this style of practice that has, you know, is feeding us. We're inheriting it but pretty severe. You know, the participants would be invited at a retreat to intone mu, those mujis, the people sitting with this in all earnestness. So in Mazindo, you'd be, and then during breaks, they were invited to go out, or in the middle of the night, you know, go out among the trees and the neighborhood. I'm told that Yamada Koun Roshi became more and more gentle about mu as his teaching evolved. He came to say, mu is like fire rising and snow falling. One student said, mu is like water rising and sun shining down. How is it this little word, mu, can bring everything so close? It's intimacy. I remember Henry saying, maybe in a mu talk recently, that mu is as tiny. You know, it makes everything as small as mu, this little speck. And mu is the entire cosmos, this entirety, this little speck. Does a dog have Buddha nature, awake nature, true nature? Do I? I just recalled this comment from a student deep into mu, who awakened in the night and said, you know, my eyes opened before thought came. That space, that opening. And then the student said that it was clear, this sense that the Zendo was lying in the bed. This world, this dynamism, awake nature, Buddha nature, does a dog have? What is it? If you're practicing with this koan, the invitation is to give yourself to mu, thoughts and all. Let everything be mu without exception. Let mu do everything. It is so freeing and so convenient. It's so alive and so intimate. Nothing but mu. Mumon published what he called the Mumonkan, or Gateless Gate, in 1229, together with a preface. The year before, in 1228, he was serving as head monk at what was then one of the most famous temples in Japan. The monks came to him asking for instruction. Mumon says he finally took up the koans of the ancient masters and used them. He says, I use them as brickbats to knock at the gate. knocking at the gate, pounding on the door. But Mumon calls it a gateless gate. One contemporary teacher says of the koans and of Mu, it's a gate with a front, but no back. Mumon says, taking up the koans, that he was inducing students according to their capacity and aspiration. Sounds like inducing labor. Koans can seem like that. But in the course of practice, no telling the gestation, a kind of release or fruition happens quite naturally, like fruit when it ripens and just falls from the tree. Koan or kongan means public case, like a fact in a case of law. Or as Yamada Koun put it, a koan is an official document upon which everyone can rely. But this fact, what Yamada Koun Roshi, the abbot of Sambo Zen, he often calls it this true fact. It's not some kind of precedent for how to organize our lives. Though it is the case that the more intimate we become with the fact of who we are, the more it affects how we live. It can't but affect it. There's this poem by Mary Oliver that came up just sitting with this. I'm not going to read the whole poem. It's called The Swan. She, with her artful use of language, describes the swan rising up, in the sky out of a pond. And this beauty. And then she says, and did you feel it in your heart? How it pertained to everything. And have you finally figured out what beauty is for? And her last line, have you changed your life? It will do that. Koans don't represent the world. They don't say, it's like this. They show it is this. Nothing but no. So I want to pivot here to a famous instruction by Dogen on what this Mu practice is, this practice realization. This comes in part out of another session not too long ago when I was over in Germany and co-leading this wonderful opportunity as here, this great joy with Henry. In Germany, it was with John Gaynor, a dear friend of Henry and of mine, and actually Henry's first teacher. What a teacher. And when we were in this retreat, John, who is very near to Dogen, he actually describes Dogen and John as this intimate mind. That's how he points to this intimacy. So all the way through, he was circling back and talking about Dogen. It just felt completely alive, and of course, very, very rich and much more in depth than what I just want to mention. But coming from that, I can't but be sort of full of this famous verse about practice realization that comes up in Dogen's fascicle. If you read Dogen at all, you know this one, the Genjo Koan, which can be translated manifesting the here and now. It's what koans are about. Not a topic, but an activity. So some of you know the story of Dogen his 13th century master. When he was 8 years old, his mother died. His father had already died. She was cremated, and Dogen watched her burning. And he saw that plume of smoke going up into the sky. And as he watched it, his mother's burning body, he suddenly had a deep experience as an 8-year-old of impermanence, of what Dogen and John call constant change. Constant change. And this experience, he carried it with him, probably it's why he became a monk. His uncle wanted him to go into the court. Dogen was very well educated, very brilliant, certainly could have done that. But he saw into what he then describes in several translations as the myriadness of things. And he wanted to explore that. So he wrote this fascicle when he was 23 and sent it to a friend. And there's this famous verse in it. This verse that's exactly about what we're doing. To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the myriad things. When actualized by the myriad things, body and mind of self and other drops away. Dogen goes on. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. That's it. Here's John's translation. To study the way, study the self. To study the self, forget the self. To forget the self, be awakened by the myriadness of things. To be awakened by the myriadness of things, drop away the body and mind of self and other. All traces of awakening are wiped away. And life with traceless awakening continues forever. That's actually what this is. To study the way of practice realization. So you start with yourself. Just, many of us here have been, immersed in this original love program that Henry has been guiding us, teaching, and he developed. It comes to mind. To study the way, is to study the self. This fathom-long body with all of its sensations and constructs, this mind, this identity that we've built up We've had it, built it up since birth, really, beginning of our lives. And it's useful for navigating the world, but it's not real. It's not real in the sense that we think. There's no substance. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing enduring. That plume of smoke, there's that beauty. Forgetting the self sounds like a tall order. Forgetting the self. It's this body, mind experience, this zendo, this sky, this history, this world, forgetting the self. But actually, it just happens, this tenderizing effect. When you really start to see the self, however it comes up, you begin to see through it, to see this does not exist in that fixed way, in that way that we can sort of divide or hold. Its actual real nature, its way is to be forgotten. Moo, such a powerful pointer. I mean, we don't even have to translate it, but you can. It's no, not having. And what is that? So we just give ourselves to this practice, returning again and again, this manifesting here and now. Then that last bit, to be awakened by the myriadness of things, that's really out of our hands. It's not up to us. You can get out of the way. You can make yourself, as one teacher says, more fetchable, more available to this intimacy. We actually can get a sense of this constant change in our sitting. Get very still. There's this shimmering. And then one sound, like that bird, or one sensation. And the myriadness, sometimes called the 10,000 things, this dynamism, it just comes in. Speaking of this sort of wild, constantly changing, topsy-turvy world, one student described lying on the ground as a child, gazing up the sky, that blue sky, through that child's eyes. And the student said it was like looking down into an ocean, the clouds swimming. That's more intimate than any fixity we might imagine. Dogen had a favorite koan that really aligns with this verse, and many of you know it. Came to him from Yaksan or Yaoshan's renowned master, whose life in the mid 8th century to the ninth century, actually overlapped 30 years with Joshu. Um, Joshu lived 120 years, so a number of masters overlapped with his lifespan. But Dogen cites this repeatedly, this brief little exchange where a monk, a student asks Yaksan, when sitting mountain still, what are you thinking? And Yaksan said, thinking, not thinking. And the student asked, how do you do that? How can you think, not thinking? And Yaksan said, non-thinking. The dash, it's one word, non-thinking. Thinking. We're thinking all the time. Our brains are so primed for it. It's a beautiful function, actually. And this is not a problem for Dogen. For Dogen, this thinking is actually an expression of oneness, of this entirety, just coming up, manifesting. And then not thinking. I mean, we can get very still, and there are moments where it just seems to cease. And then there is the total cessation of this emptiness. So maybe Yaksan is pointing to this oneness and this emptiness. And then, how do you do that? Non-thinking. The myriadness of constant change. Nothing to get rid of, nothing to fix, just the invitation to mountain still sitting, to practice, realize what you are. Draw near to move, soak in move. Another word for this. Sort of a non-word because it stands alone like is love. Love with no opposite. Henry's calling it original love, your original face, your original spontaneity, your native ground, this constant change, this myriadness that is actualizing us, manifesting in us. What else could this be? How else? Communicating with a wonderful longtime Mountain Cloud student. Many of you know Maura, with us very much in spirit, maybe listening or maybe later. But she just wrote back when she heard about this intimacy with all things, you know, but koans can teach us. Breathe in, love. Breathe out, love. Love with no opposite. This receiving, releasing, this dynamism. Yaksan was the one who told us, as well as Dogen, take the backward step and shine the light in. Or learn the backward step, that turn, opening up that space. Dogen writes, your body, mind of itself will drop off and your original face will appear. He says, it will do this of itself. Your body, mind of itself will drop off. And he says, if you want to realize what in this passage he calls suchness, this manifesting here and now, this constant change and this fact, that which you are. If you want to realize it now. There's no other time. Manifesting here and now. Just really quickly, I kind of lost track of time. There's this beautiful koan with Yaksan where he's doing, well, he's a rough, tough master, I think, or severe might be a better word. Very clear. So he only has about 8 or 9 monks. And it's been a long time, many months, since Yaksan has said a word to them, a word of teaching. And one monk is brave enough to go to Yaksan, Yaoshan, and say, Master, it's been so long since we've heard a word from you. Please come and give a talk. And so Yaksan agrees, and he orders, this gong to be rung. And he ascends the rostrum, the teaching seat, and he just sits. He never said a word. And after a while, the koan doesn't say how long. He descends the rostrum and goes back to his room. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Momon's verse to this case is a presentation of the fact. Such an amazing gift to us, this verse. Dog, Buddha nature, the perfect manifestation, the absolute command. A little has or has not, and body is lost, life is lost. Dog, Buddha nature. The entire koan collapsed. The 10,000 myriad things, the birds singing, the rain falling, the computer humming, the sound backfiring. The absolute command. It's really just this. Every breath, every step, wherever you turn, it's you. It's this remarkable intimacy. I want to say it comes to us, it comes out from us, but it's just one. And it's so dynamic. A little has or has not, and life is lost, body is lost. Some people in this Indo may wish right now, and we're going to find ways to become, more kind and gentle to our bodies as needed. Well, mom may be giving us a warning, has not, watch out. That's not what this is. It's really not about having or not having. There's nothing to have. There's nothing outside you. There's nothing to reach for. You are it. So that pain in the legs, that activity in the mind, well, we can welcome it along with this chance to share this practice these days, and with great gratitude to one another, to all the 10,000 myriad things for this vast support. Thank you.